Well, today we're going to continue in our series, New Year's Excuses. And it's a little odd, but I've entitled it this because most of our New Year's resolutions are often abandoned through well-oiled excuses, or depending on where you grew up, could be old. But well-oiled excuses are really what causes us to abandon these. I think everyone begins the new year, or those of you that are us who you call it resolutions, you can call it goals, whatever you'd like to call it. But I don't think anyone ever sets out to say, you know what, I'm setting this so that in 30 to 90 days I can abandon it and feel guilty the rest of the year. I don't think anybody, that's their goal, but we usually abandon them because we do have these very well-oiled excuses that allow us to walk away from them. I like what quarterback Cam Newton says about excuses. He says, I hate excuses. Excuses are a disease. And he's right, because most diseases spread. And excuses are like attitudes. You have one excuse, someone goes, yeah, I like that. That's a great excuse. I'm going to use that excuse. Yeah, we shouldn't, or we never should, or I should feel that way too. And it becomes this disease. And so I agree with Cam Newton. And Ben Franklin was once quoted as even saying, he or she that is good at making excuses is seldom good for anything. And the reason why is we're made where our energy can only be truly focused in one place at a time. It's just the way that we're made. If we're going to have the maximum impact in our life, energy has to be focused in one direction. And so when you spend your energy of your life, your mental, emotional, spiritual energy making excuses, it dissipates the energy that you're allowed to move your life forward in whatever direction it is that your heart truly desires. And so what happens is we allow this excuse to dissipate our energy, thus leaving us powerless or living on this excuse of why we're not going to pursue whatever it is. So I view it like this. Our life will be defined by either the things that we produce or the excuses we provide. Now, when you think about someone in life, it doesn't matter what stage of life they are in, we will define them by one of these two things. By, wow, look at this young man or woman in their 20s and look what they've accomplished and produced with their life. Or, and it doesn't matter, I'm saying 20s, it could be 50s or 60s. Or we say this, wow, it's just so sad because of the potential they had. And rather than pursuing that potential and using it, they use this excuse and settled for or quit because. And so it's interesting because it really is. At the end of our days or in the middle of our day, our life in general is defined by the things we produce or the excuses we provide. So today what I want to do is I want to draw our attention to one excuse in particular. And it's one that is used, I believe, more often than any I've ever heard, especially in the realm of my category, church, spiritual things, whatever. But it's the excuse of age. And I've heard it from every gamut, young, middle-aged, old. It's for some reason, it doesn't matter what age you are, it seems to be so often an excuse people grab a hold of because they think it carries so much weight and validity to keep them from it. It's where we use our age as this excuse to not pursue the desires of our heart. It's where we use this excuse not to fulfill the calling that we know that God's placed in our life, or this passion that we know that He's placed deep within us. And whether it's that we're too young or we're too old, and then there's the other that says, you know what, at this age in my life, this stage, you can call it age, stage, or season, my life's so busy that I just can't, do that right now. Now, it's funny, in regards to age, I read something really humorous the other day about it, and it said this. It says, there really are actually only 3 stages in life: youth, adulthood, and my, you're looking well. And I realized that really is the case, because what they're saying is you look good for your age, and that's usually not a compliment. Not to those of us that receive it. But if we were to actually stop for a moment and be willing to be honest with ourselves, to truly be willing to be honest with ourselves, forget anybody else in our life, to be honest with ourselves, this would be a true statement. Often we use our age as an excuse because of old insecurities, labels, thought patterns, or habits that we're unwilling to break. We've all had that moment of inspiration, whether it's in a classroom or whether it's at a school event, or it's a video that we watch on Facebook, or a speech that we hear, and we have this spark, this inspiration. And what we don't realize is this, that spark could only do that to us because God had already placed the fuse within us. Because I've had people, have you ever had people say, oh my God, I'm gonna send you this thing from Facebook. It is the most incredible, most exciting, most inspiring thing you ever watch, or greatest song you ever hear. You're like, oh, that was great. It did nothing for you. Why? Because that fuse isn't inside of you. But we have that moment where we have that, and it sparks us, and usually we immediately think of what our life could look like if we ran with this. And we quickly pull back from it, and usually, more often than not, the excuse is we have these old insecurities or some label that we were placed on us at some season in our life, that you'll never be this, or you're made for this and not that. Or it's some thought pattern that we have, or a habit that we know in order to go here, we've got to let go of this habit. And we would rather hold on to the insecurity. We would rather continue to wear the label. And it's sad. And we would rather hold on to this excuse or this habit instead of pursuing what has inspired our heart. When it comes to us using our age as our excuse, I want us to consider these people who most of us, or all of us, respect and admire, who chose not to use their age as their excuse. And let's see if maybe they can speak from their position and what they produced in order to maybe change some of our thinking today. Jesse Owens was 22 years old when he won 4 gold medals in Berlin in 1936. Albert Einstein was 26 years old when he wrote the theory of relativity. 26 years old. I didn't even know what the theory of relativity was at 26 years old. J.K. Rowling was 30 years old when she finished the first manuscript of Harry Potter. Oprah Winfrey, this one got 32 years old when she started her talk show. 32. Martin Luther King Jr. was 34 years old when he wrote the speech, I Have a Dream. Now, I think I can speak especially for our fellowship. I am so glad that he didn't use the excuse of being 34 years old with small kids and just too busy. Rosa Parks was 42 when she refused to obey the bus driver and give up her seat. Henry Ford was 45 when the Ford T came out. Suzanne Collins was 46 years old when she wrote The Hunger Games, not when the movies came out. 46 when she wrote it. Charles Darwin was 50 years old when his book on the origin of species came out. Da Vinci was 51 when he painted the Mona Lisa. Ray Kroc was 53 when he bought McDonald's and turned it into the franchise we know it as today. Get this one. Dr. Seuss was 54 when he wrote Cat in the Hat. I don't know what you do with that. Where have you sat? Seriously. He has transformed children's books. He wrote it at 54 years old. I'm so glad I can say he was older than me when he wrote that. Colonel Sanders, 61 years old when he started KFC franchise. J.R.R. Tolkien, get this, 62 when the Lord of the Rings books came out. You see, I'm going to stop here for a second. I got some more, but here's what I love about that one. He was manifesting his dream in private before the world knew of it in public. He had no idea they were going to be as renowned as they were. He was just writing what was passionate and what was placed within him. He knew it had to come out. He could have made excuses not to write. He could have made excuses not to write the second book, right? He's like, you know what, nothing's really even going on with this one. Why am I write? Because it's in you. That's why. Ronald Reagan was 69 years old when he became the president. And get this, Nelson Mandela was 76 years old when he became the president. What I've come to realize is that wrestling with using age as our excuse is nothing new to our modern 21st century American ideology. It's actually a centuries old tradition. Now, when you say, I'm all about new, I'm not all old traditional. You're very traditional if you're using excuses to keep you from what you know in your heart you long to do or to be, or even be a part of. Sometimes it's not what you're to create, it's what you're to help co-create. It's not what you're to start, it's what you're to support. That'll preach, that's free, that's not even in my notes. When being faced with the purpose for which he was created, the Old Testament prophet Jeremiah had this to say in Jeremiah chapter 1. He said, "Alas, sovereign Lord, I said, I do not know how to speak. I am what? Too young. But the Lord said to me, do not say, I am too young. You must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them." Remember last week's excuse, fear? "For I am with you and will rescue you." It's not saying everybody's going to applaud you. For God to say, I'm going to rescue me, there's going to be some people that really might not like what I'm about to produce. Jealousy is vicious. Envy can cause a lot of pain. And guess what else? Our obedience makes others' disobedience stand out. And so guess what they want us to do? Stop being obedient, because it works in their heart going, if you're going to get rid of your excuse, that means I got to get rid of my excuses. So you need to chill out. From reading the Bible to watching people's lives, I've learned this when it comes to age and life. We can choose to use age as our launching pad or our deathbed. Just watching people's lives, reading people's story, and knowing people today, I've realized that this is what happens with our age. It is either the launching pad saying, you know what, I may be 25, I'm already 60, here we go, or our deathbed. But make no mistake, it is our choice to make. No one else can make the choice for us. I remember when I started college, everyone else was finished with college at my age. I was the oldest person in the class. When I went to grad school, I was the oldest person in the class by 15 years. It's crazy. Doesn't matter the age. It's the obedience that matters. It's saying, is this going to be the launching pad or is this going to be the deathbed? I remember at 40 years old, I said no, and that's when I died. That's when a part of me died. I'm inspired by a man named Caleb in the Bible and his attitude on age. This is inspiring. It is for me. Joshua 14, verses 10 through 12. Look what it says. Now then, just as the Lord promised, he had kept me alive for 45 years since the time he said this to Moses. Get this, 45 years. Some of us, we get impatient 45 minutes after God says something, right? While Israel moved about in the wilderness. So here I am today, look at this, 85 years old. I am still as strong today as the day Moses sent me out. I'm just as vigorous to go out to battle now as I was then. Now give me this hill country that the Lord promised me that day. You yourself heard then that the Anakites were there and their cities were large and fortified, but the Lord helping me at 85 years old, I will drive them out just as he said. So just because we gave an excuse to keep us from what God inspired us or created us or skilled us to do, doesn't mean that God changed his mind on that's what he created us, skilled us, and made us to do. Today is the best day for you to say yes to what God's placed within you. Today's the best day for it. You know why? Because you haven't done it yet. You say, well, I've never, what's in my heart, I don't know if I've ever seen done before. That's awesome. Those are the best ones. Those are the best ones. Create what's not there. It's beautiful. So much of our life is determined by the choice we make with our butts. Yes, you're seeing both spellings up there. Seriously, so much of life is determined by the choices we make with our butts. You say, what do you mean? You don't even have a butt. Thank you very much. Appreciate you pointing that out. Here's what I mean. I'm only 20, but Martin Luther King Jr., I may only be 34 years old, but I have a dream. And I'm going to make sure the world hears it. I may be in my later years, but I got this kid's book in me, as silly as it sounds. It's goofy. What's the name of it? Cat in the Hat. There ain't nobody going to read some goofy book called Cat in the Hat. Are you kidding me? I don't know. It's just something I want to write. I may be in my later years, but I will not die with this inside of me. Those kind of butts are much better than, yeah, because of my age, I'm just going to plant my butt right here and just make up great excuses. Psalm 71 gives us a great perspective of the spectrum of life's years. I love it. It's like the perfect passage for today's message. Psalm 71, and we'll skip through some verses in there, but verse 5, for you have been my hope, sovereign Lord, my confidence since my youth. I have become a sign to many. You are my strong refuge. So now you got to realize some years going by, if he's saying that you become a sign, he's starting to age. Verse 9, do not cast me away when I am old. Do not forsake me when my strength is gone. Verse 18, even when I am old and gray, or old and bald, or old and hair colored, doesn't matter. Do not forsake me, my God, till I declare your power. Look at this, to the next generation. God, you've got to get this. Some of what God has placed within us is for the purpose of the next generation. You know, I really can't do this with my grandkids because I don't want to offend my kids. My kids didn't put it in them, so that's why my grandkids are that way. So you're going to let that pass the next generation. You're going to put your butt here because they put their butt there. Really? Really? Because one generation is racist and bigots and homophobes. We're going to pass that on to the next generation, or we're going to pass on something else to the next generation. We choose. We choose to make the excuse of saying nothing or doing something. That's the choice we make. You say, well, I can't change the world. You can change that person's world. And maybe God's created not you to change the world, but you to change their world because it's their role to change the world. Everybody talks about King David. He never saw the true glory of the Lord because he was king, but his biggest role was kingmaker of his son, who saw the greatest works. Maybe your greatest calling is to raise up world-changing kids and grandkids. Maybe it's not for you to stand on the stage, but for you to create someone with the confidence and the passion to do it. Because everybody else is telling them that they can't and they shouldn't. The truth is, the more years we have walked with God and lived in the flow of the Spirit, the more joyful and useful we should become, not resistant and resentful. The most resistant and resentful people I've ever met are people of faith over 40. And it's usually because of where they chose to place their butt. Let me put it another way. As we age, it's not that we ever have life figured out, but I will say this. We should mature and have life filtered out. Removing excuses, refusing to settle for anything less than God's best, and being committed to, listen to this, live a life of well-filtered priorities, not well-defended excuses. Okay, listen, you die with fortified excuses. That's great. That's great. I don't want to die like that. It's funny how often when God brings you into a certain subject, like right now, of excuses, and then he'll bring a verse that you've read 1,000 times that has nothing to do with this excuse, and suddenly it gets illuminated and it means everything about this topic. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, so let me press pause right there. The last verse is, we need to get rid of our excuses so we can tell and pass the power and purposes and wills of God onto the what? Next generation. Then you come over here to Hebrews and it says, listen, there's also a heavenly host that did their part. And you are their kids or their grandkids or you're their great grandkids and they're watching you. They're watching us. It says, since we're surrounded by such great cloud of witnesses, people ask all the time, Pastor, do you believe that the people who go on before us can still see us? If you want to believe the Word of God, then that's what that verse means to me. I don't think they get to watch every little nasty thing you do if you know what I'm saying. But I think in general, God allows them to see the moments of our life. It says, let us throw off everything that hinders. I looked up the word everything in the original Greek text, and guess what it means? Y'all are geniuses. I love how brilliant you are. So guess what everything includes? So in context to today's message, everything would also include throw off every excuse. That hinders. Because see, the next one, a lot of people go, and the sin that so easily entangles you. So many people in their either their righteousness or their self-righteousness go, I don't have any big sins. I struggle, but I really do try to live this, God-honoring life. And so I can't think of really like any major sin that's holding back God's like, I know that. It's your excuse that has hindered you. And why does he want us to do that? So we can change the whole world? So we can judge everyone else? So we can get involved in the sin management and become the holy police of the church? Is that why he said? What does he say? And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for who? Us. You see, your lane's not my lane. My lane's not your lane. The race that is marked out for us. Throw off every excuse. Money, education, physical abilities or lack thereof, sexual orientation, family history, color of skin, where you live in the country, where you live on, which side of the tracks you live on. What others had called you and labeled you. But most definitely, our age. Throw off that excuse today. Age is never an excuse to ignore the race that God has marked out for our life. Because it is only yours to run. So what will it be for us? We got some big boy and big girl decisions to make today. This huge can't even get the word. Services honoring, how about that? Tomorrow of Martin Luther King Jr. Where would our country be if he chose excuses to keep him from doing what God had placed in his heart? love the way Ray says it when he and I get attacked for, I guess, what people would call our liberal philosophies and how we love and accept anybody and everybody. I wouldn't want to go back to the America of the 50s or the 60s or the 70s. I wouldn't want to live in a time where exclusion was celebrated. Yeah, I wish we'd go back to the good old days, man. World's going to hell in a handbasket. Have you seen the news lately? I would rather have this news than back when it was no news because it was done behind the scenes. I don't know what God has moved in your life and purposed you to do. It could be to change the environment of your home. It could be to change the environment of your workplace. It could be to start a nonprofit. It could be to create a company. It could be to write a book, play an instrument, write a song, work with children, be a first impressions person on here to help people feel welcome when they show up to God because they think they're going to walk in and be judged like everybody else is judged. I don't know. You know. It's your race, not mine. So we have a choice to make. Will we live by our butts or sitting on our butts? Will our age be our launching pad or our deathbed? But make no mistake about it. The choice is an individual choice that we all make for our own life. Well, I don't know if I want to choose. You just did. We have to choose. We do choose. All I'm saying is, make age your launching pad. Make age your launching pad. Father, thank you for all the examples from sacred text to secular text of God, you showing us that your Spirit flows through humanity to bring ideas to life, to bring ideology to life, to bring change to life. And so, God, I pray that you would give us the strength, give us the wisdom to throw off the excuse of age and run the race, God, that you marked out for our life. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.